Okay. Hey everyone. Um, yeah, just gonna go through a couple items. On a high level, things have been pretty quiet from our end in terms of external facing communications, but internally, we've just been really heads down. We've got some really awesome designs that we're working on in terms of a new front end for this upcoming launch. Just a big refresh. We've been doing a lot of trader interviews. Some of you have been part of those. So those interviews and giving feedback on how to make the system better and kind of pain points, and we're addressing those and basically sort of starting from first principles and working our way back up with all the learnings that we've had. So that's been really great, and we'd love to show some of that hopefully soon once we get a little closer. Also working on mobile support for those of you who check via mobile. As you know, we're planning on launching on Avalanche. We've been waiting a little bit for a protocol that we plan on partnering with. They've been slightly delayed, so it looks like we will be launching. It looks like the early April, late March timeline. So we're really excited about that in terms of getting that out there with some of the refresh that I talked about and being able to have that swap adapter feature, especially on things like Trader Joe, things like Penguin. Those have been really great teams to collaborate with. They've drawn a lot of excitement, a lot of community members. I think Trader Joe is probably one of the top 5 dApps being used across the entire space. So really excited about this. As you know, we're also working on a Frax partnership. You probably saw this. So Futureswap, and this was talked about in the last community call. This proposal is still being talked about. We've been sort of discussing with their team. There's been a response by one of their community members, and we are addressing this. Just making sure we are addressing the right points. So it is going a little slow, but we're not trying to rush anything here. We're trying to make sure things are done right. In terms of the token side, I think overall things have been, there hasn't been the core focus of the team on the tokens. It's mostly been on the product and trying to make sure that that's in the best state possible for launch, and then focusing on the tokens after that. We've been at length discussing VE. We've discussed it with the community. We've done community calls around it. We've done ambassador calls around it. I think at this point there's enough clarity. I'm a really big fan of how Ribbon is doing their VE. For us, there are some things that we want in terms of control, and just listening to other people who have VE and how they would change it if they had to start over, like what they would make better. And so we've been taking in some of that from other protocols and considering, okay, if we were to do VE, how would we do it to make sure we avoid some of these pitfalls and making sure we have this control. So, there's one route of just like copying the curve code and saying, okay, we have VE. And then there's, taking the best parts of VE and putting it in a Futureswap in a way that makes the most sense for us. And so that's kind of the path we've been on. So inherently that takes just a bit longer. And so we sort of see that in the price. So that's reflective, but I think long term it's a better way to go. It is something we're working on. We're excited about it, and it will make the system just, I think, more attractive for token holders and from outside protocols. In the interim, when we launch on Avalanche, the plan is to have a staking pool so that at least we have utility for token holders. I think that's going to be really important, to have something for them to do while we build out VE. So this is sort of the temporary plan while we do this, just to give to put something in the works while we're building this, because I think some utility is better than no utility. So this is something we've been thinking about, and we'll provide more communication over the next 2 weeks. Yeah, and then just shout out to Wilton, our marketing head. It's been really just building up our marketing efforts and figuring out how to execute this, pushing out content, and just realigning sort of on the marketing side, which has been really great. So I appreciate that. Thanks a lot, Wilton.
+1.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think, just more generally, overall, the market is like pretty bearish right now, which I think is, it's not disappointing. It's too bad. I think it's a good filter for a lot of the noise that was going on. I think you're just sort of like hearing a lot of people more talk about like building and focusing on like creating value, and I think that's ultimately good for the space. We needed something to sort of like realign with what's valuable, and this is a time where it's sort of to be heads down and just focusing on building the right thing versus like making a lot of noise. So we're excited about where this is going. Futureswap, basically a permissionless leverage protocol that's far superior than the ones out there. Ultimately, we're interested in all types of derivatives. So this is, the first stab at just truly permissionless systems. Yeah, this is something that I've been thinking about for a while, and the team is pretty aligned on. And we're building this out, and we're excited for the launch, and just creating the best experience for our users as possible, I think, is sort of our main goal. Yeah, I think that's on a high level. That's sort of what's going on with Futureswap. If anyone has any questions, please put them into the community call channel. I see sumo roles point on staking. Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, so I think in terms of staking, definitely, we'll have something, like I said, in the interim while we build out VE. We want to do it right. I think you can look at Ribbon as something that we're pretty inspired by, just in terms of how they did it and some of the features and the simplicity of their VE model. I think it's pretty interesting. We do have just like a backlog of work to make sure the trade experience is the best. And so that's why you're not hearing a lot of news about it, just because we do have some things to finish out in terms of features for this launch. Is the Frax partnership aimed at increasing liquidity? Yes. So part of that Frax partnership is definitely aimed at increasing liquidity. It's also aimed at just having a very close connection to a stablecoin protocol, because part of Futureswap's big value add is providing leverage on these assets, and it's, unless you have liquidity, it's sort of difficult to do this. So having someone come in to remove that requirement, and not completely remove it, but just really help and be able to create a lot of markets around this, will be really interesting as an experiment. The pairs that we have right now. Yeah, so the pairs that we have on Arbitrum right now, this version of Futureswap is V4. V4 right now only works with Uniswap V3, and we sort of saw Uniswap V3 as on Arbitrum as not having enough liquidity, and it was sort of expensive. We had to pay quite a bit just to bootstrap these pools, and so our main focus was saying, okay, let's pause on sort of new market creation and instead update the protocol so that we can tap into liquidity on Sushi, on Uniswap v2, on whatever protocol that's in AMM, and sort of go from there. So definitely we've sort of paused the new market creation on Arbitrum in favor of launching this new version of the protocol so that it can be more flexible. And sort of what we'll do is we'll launch on Avalanche and then update the one on Arbitrum, down the road, and that will allow it to sort of have many more markets. But I think the first step is just like we want to address the main concern instead of giving out more FST for pairs that weren't performing as well as we hoped. And I think a lot of this comes from, look, Futureswap's main value add in some ways is providing leverage on pairs that our competitors don't have. Providing leverage on pairs that are really exciting and sort of new and are growing and are interesting. And so that's where Futureswap wants to be. And a lot of those pairs right now are not on Uniswap v3 on Arbitrum. And so we want to move to a place where those pairs are. I mean, a lot of those pairs are on Ethereum mainnet, and a lot of those pairs are on Avalanche and some of the other chains. And so we've been sort of looking at how do we create an experience that is able to capture that, so we can have sort of leverage on the most exciting tokens. That doesn't mean that we don't go after some of the high cap tokens, but it definitely means more of a focus on what's not already available in the market. Yeah, and so when we launch, we'll definitely be having different product offerings on Avalanche. We sort of have our list of what pairs we want, and initially it will be those with quite a bit of liquidity, just to test, like, hey, everything's functioning as we expect, like everything's running smoothly, and slowly just go after more interesting and risky pairs, sort of going down the ladder of how much liquidity we need. And it really depends on the partnership with the token. So we've been working on those partnerships of what protocols do we want to work with, what do we want to list. So that's been good. How many devs work at Futureswap? I think at this point, probably 8 in total, 7, 8.
All right.
Yeah, and in terms of volume, I think the volume's been pretty low in comparison to our pure perpetual product. And so that's something we definitely want to address, but more so something that we want to address is just the amount of users. I think the question is like, how many people are actively using Futureswap, on a monthly or daily basis? And so that's the metric that we want to focus on as much as possible in delivering value, is like, how can we make sure to basically just like allow people to make money in like the best way possible. And I think there's a lot of really good protocols going after sort of Ethereum and Bitcoin and some of the higher end pairs. And that's great. And I think now there's a venue for doing that, and they do it pretty well. And what Futureswap wants to do is, go after the pairs that, like I said, aren't on those platforms, and it's more permissionless than anything else, so that people can basically just add liquidity and have this experience where there's leverage. And we're pretty close to doing that, especially with partnerships and just working with these teams and looking at the code and being able to help people. It's been a really eye-opening experience, just to build and what those launches look like, and understanding some of the problems. And overall, I think the team's in a pretty good position now, just to do more stuff. But there's definitely been some learnings, and with this next launch, there's going to be even more learnings in terms of trying out the strategy of going after sort of the many pairs. So hopefully, Jack, that answers some of your question. But yeah, on a high level, cool. On a high level, just we realize volumes are pretty low. Tokenomics are sort of in my opinion, they're sort of broken. I think this needs to be addressed, and then giving some kind of staking option, making sure that it's enough unique value that people are like, oh wow, this I can't really get this anywhere else, and creating a really compelling trade experience. Those are sort of the main factors that Futureswap is working on. And yeah, it it does take some time, but we're definitely thinking about it every day and working on it. We do have a treasury for this version, and the team has its own funds that we've raised. So we're good for a couple years. And in terms of treasury, it's something that's going to hopefully grow over time, but it's not the primary focus.
Thanks, Jack.
Any other questions that I can answer?
Looks like Starfire's typing.
Yeah, and then just as a question for the audience, as we build this new version, as we get ready for this Avalanche launch, I'm curious how many of you would use Avalanche. And in my opinion, a lot of the Avalanche launch is just like doing many partnerships and working in many Discords and pulling in new users. But also I'm curious, like, of the community members that we have, how many are using Avalanche, and then what pairs would they want to see? We've been doing a lot of research on pairs and what would be really fun to have, and what protocols that we're interested in, making sure the protocols that we list are as legit as possible. But would love feedback from the community of what they would want to see. Yeah. Cool. That's awesome. Yeah, definitely. Starfire, if you want to ping me on the BD side, would definitely love some help. There's a lot of work to do, so always happy to open that up for community members that want to help out. That would be great.
Yeah, a thing to add to that too is if anybody's interested in helping out with growing the community or contributing to it, we will have certain bounties that you can do to earn Futureswap tokens. And if that's something that you're interested in, let us know, and we would be happy to work with you and help you with the path of, what you're trying to accomplish. In the end, this is like our community, so anything you do, you're doing for both yourself and for all of us. So yeah, we'd be happy to work with you.
Yeah, Matt, just to answer your question on Avalanche, the advantages are really comes down to like liquidity and users. So in terms of usage, I think Avalanche has something like 10x the amount of users that Arbitrum has right now. And it doesn't mean that like Arbitrum's bad. Arbitrum's been great. But just in terms of like where users are, they just have many users. Now, something to know is like their users are very different than Arbitrum or Ethereum users. They're generally like not whales. It's a lot of newer users or users who didn't get to experience the Ethereum wave, and sort of they come in and they're excited about crypto. They've chosen Avalanche as their preferred location just because it's sort of a blank slate, and that's where they're sort of wanting to get their experience. So you've got a lot of really new users, new users looking for protocols and sort of where they can find their 5x, and sort of we want to be able to have an experience for them where they feel really comfortable using Futureswap. It should be really simple. It should be really straightforward for them to sort of manage their positions across the most exciting pairs on that network, or any network for that matter. So users is one, and then liquidity is the other. I think the last time I checked, Arbitrum has, I think I want to say like, it was a while ago, but like 200 million, maybe 300 million. They've probably grown since then, but I think Avalanche has something like 12 billion. So in terms of liquidity, you can check DeFi Llama, but it's really there's really a massive difference. So you've got more users and more liquidity, and those are two signals we sort of follow. Yeah, I'm curious how many people were sort of watching the. Hopefully that answered your question, by the way. Yeah, what do people think about Phantom? Because this is also something we've been looking at. We saw the whole Solidly debacle, and it really made us think like, wow, it looks like there's a lot of room for interesting tokenomics, AMMs, and leverage. Because one of the things that they were planning on doing was adding leverage to this whole thing, very similar to Futureswap, though they hadn't built it yet. So would love to hear what the community thinks about Solidly. I know it was a very, very popular thing, so I'm sure some of our members here had exposure to it. Nice, Jack. Yeah, those pairs have been really interesting as well. They've always come up on my list. It's something that we're planning on listing for sure. Phantom would be a shit show for sure. Yeah, but I agree. Good time to step in. People, it was insane how much liquidity in like 3-4 days. There was like billions of dollars. So it was pretty impressive to see how quickly it grew.
Wow.
There was just that much demand for people. Just like want an exciting project to ape into. And like, look, I've never felt the need to like pull an Andre and like hype things up and then just like basically walk away. Like that's just not my style. I'm more interested in like delivering things that we sort of like promise we deliver on, and making sure we do that to the best of our ability, even though it seems a little slower. But definitely took note, was watching the Solidly thing extensively, was pinging the team all the time about, hey, like look at what they're doing. It was really exciting. So I think there's something to say about like capturing some of that energy, but just in a more legitimate way that's also responsible and not just going to like walk away from users.
Right. Phantom is a good name for it. Kind of comes up on you like a phantom out of nowhere.
We would love to. I think we're just pretty like we're pretty developer heavy, so we spend quite a bit of time focusing on the protocol and the things around this. But if there's someone who's interested in expanding or promoting in different countries, definitely ping Wilton. He's now heading up marketing, so he would be the go-to for that. But always would love anyone who's wanting to promote Futureswap more so. We're very, very interested in this. Let us know how we can help you. Yeah, definitely want to empower anyone that wants to grow that idea. Hopefully that answered your question, Mehran. Cool. Yeah, any other questions that anyone has? Like, feel free to talk about anything. We're happy to discuss whatever. Hopefully, we were able to shed a little bit of light on what's going on. The next community call is in 2 weeks. So by then, we should have an update on a clear launch and what pairs we plan on launching. Hopefully not committing to a launch date, but definitely a ballpark. And yeah, let us know like what would be the best flow? Do you think having an experience that helps users go from Ethereum to Avalanche would be helpful, or Avalanche or Arbitrum to Avalanche? Would definitely love to understand, like, as our community shifts over to try our Avalanche version, like, what do they need? What would be the best experience? Like, some of you are already using Avalanche, so you don't care. So that's something we don't have to focus on. So we can put resources elsewhere, but would definitely love feedback on that. Jack, yeah. By the way, great suggestion on pairs. Cool. Well, that's that's about time. Let Starfire type his question, and then we'll end this call. Okay, no worries. There's pressure.
Yeah. All eyes on the typers.
Yeah, Isib, I totally agree. They can figure it out, but just want to give our users sort of the best experience possible. So we will focus on the protocol and the front end as much as possible. But yeah, if there's a big outcry for creating a better UI experience for transferring, we will pay attention to that. But thank you. Cool. All right. Well, thanks for joining, and hope to see you on the next one.
Yeah, thanks a lot, guys. We have a really good audience this time. I'm really happy about it. So for the POAPs, what are we calling it again? Pope or POAP?
POAP. POAP.
POAP. We are going to do a manual distribution. So I will be DMing you if you have been in the call for a long enough period. Yeah. So expect DMs from me.
Cool. See everyone. Bye.
See you guys.